Hello, my name is Jahshan, and today I will be discussing the Second Chance Act. I will first be discussing a little background information in the problem. Mass incarceration increased in the 1980s and 1990s. At that time, reentry was a national political issue, but the problems that were associated with it are the larger issue. People are going in and out of prison every single day while struggling to find a place to live, a job, and other issues causing them to turn back to their criminal ways, leading them back into incarceration. Some reasons why include social problems, living in urban communities, and low income. These ex-offenders come back to prison due to the same reasons that led to their initial criminal behavior. In 2004, President Bush proposed a re-entry initiative for prisoners that cost $300 million in his State of the Union address. It was introduced as a path that led to a better life for prisoners when getting out of prison. In 2005, it was introduced as a movement for community safety through re-entry services. In 2007, states were spending even more money on correctional costs than they were in the 1980s, and if they continued like this, the costs would have increased drastically. In 2008, 4 years after President Bush declared the need for re-entry services in his State of the Union address, the Second Chance Act was signed into law. The Second Chance Act created programs with evidence-based services that call for development of new alternatives to incarceration. While the Second Chance Act may be successful in decreasing recidivism, there are some issues with the programs it created. The programs that are created must get a lot of people from different criminal backgrounds and age groups, making it harder for some than others. Another issue is if people don't want to go into a program and get help, aren't they more likely to commit a crime and get incarcerated again? While the Second Chance Act has its pros, it also has its cons. I will now be discussing the goals and the focus of the Second Chance Act. The Second Chance Act authorizes about $340 million spent on reentry resources in the reentry programs. The Act increased the availability and duration of drug treatment programs for ex-offenders, which incorporated their families. The Second Chance Act also helps fund the creation of reentry courts, authorized services, juvenile offender reentry demonstration projects, and mentoring. The main goal and the whole idea of the Second Chance Act is to give ex-offenders coming out of prison a second chance at a better lifestyle. The Second Chance Act identifies 6 main objectives. The first of the 6 are these 3 purposes: to reduce recidivism, increase public safety, and help state and local government deal with an increase of ex-offenders returning to their community. The second objective focuses on rebuilding ties between the ex-offenders and their families. The third objective focuses on encouraging the development and expansion of programs that help enhance both public safety and recidivism by providing substance abuse treatment and other comprehensive services. The fourth objective focuses on protecting the public while promoting law-abiding conduct by providing offenders with necessary services while incarcerated. The fifth objective focuses on assisting offenders when re-entering their community after being incarcerated to create and establish law-abiding and self-sustaining life through the provision of transitional services. And finally, the sixth objective of the Second Chance Act focuses on providing offenders incarcerated with services such as educational and job placements to help the re-entry into communities. I will now be discussing the research utilized. There has been a lot of research conducted to determine how successful the Second Chance Act is. A lot of research proves the success of the Second Chance Act reentry programs in decreasing recidivism, increasing public safety, and helping state and local governments deal with the increase of ex-offenders returning into their community. There has been a lot of research done in multiple states on certain prisons. One major study was conducted on 4 groups in New York City on a reentry program called RIDE, also known as Rikers Island Discharge Enhancement Program. These 4 groups included people who did participate in the program, people who did not participate in the program, people who completed the program, and people who did not fully complete the program. This study was conducted on a jail-based reentry program in New York City. This program starts while the individuals are incarcerated and included services after they were released for 90 days. There were 2 phases in this study. The first phase is a comparison of the group of people who did participate in the RIDE program and the group who did not participate. The second phase is a comparison between the people who fully completed the program for 90 days and people who partially completed the program but left before 90 days. This helps see if the participants are receiving the full number of services. They used matching techniques that showed that the groups were similar in age, race, ethnicity, gender, mental illness, drug use, and so on. The second study is a mixed methods research design, which resulted in proving that reentry programs are very effective. In this research strategy, there were 2 phases, one qualitative and one quantitative. The qualitative phase focused on the documenting of evidence-based practices across treatment, recovery, and reentry elements. This specifies degrees of implementation, intensity, and program fidelity. The second phase, which is the quantitative one, focuses on statistical specification of the program's impact and effectiveness through an experimental design. To collect data for the first phase, they used group interviews, observations, and other qualitative research techniques. The second phase had a quasi-experimental design, which features the 4 usual components of experimental data. The data for this study was collected from the official DCSO and the Delaware County Adult Probation records for both participants and non-participants. I will now be discussing the major findings. There is a lot of evidence that suggests that the Second Chance Act reentry programs are successful in reducing rates of recidivism. This means that it is achieving the primary goal of the program. In the RIDE program study, when comparing participants who did participate in the RIDE program to those who didn't, there wasn't a significant difference. But when comparing individuals who did attend the 90-day post-release services to those who didn't participate at all, the participants who did fully attend did a better job at not going back to prison. These findings suggest that the program dosage is important. The second study that collected data from the official DCSO and Delaware County Adult Probation records had findings proving that the outcome evaluation supported that the treatment for both programs is effective. There were significant differences in the rate of recidivism that were found between the 27.7% participants and the matched 75% comparison groups. The Second Chance Act has no specific impact on community groups. It is meant to help all ex-offenders and let them have a second chance at a better life. I will now be discussing the policy implications. If the Second Chance Act programs continue to be as successful as evidence has proven them to be, recidivism rates will decrease more as the years go by. Research states that the Second Chance Act most likely isn't going to dramatically repair prison reentry. Although the Second Chance Act revolves around reducing recidivism rates, it shouldn't be its only focus. It should extend itself by including therapeutic and rehabilitative benefits. Education programs help prove that post-secondary education along with mental health treatment programs has strong effects on reducing recidivism rates. But the mental health treatment programs don't focus on the prisoners diagnosed with mental health. The programs focus on problem solving, goal setting, managing stress and fear, and improving cognitive skills. This helps with recidivism. The reentry programs not only show effectiveness in the reduction of recidivism, but have attributes. Some of these attributes include coordinated pre-release and post-release services, the reentry process beginning as soon as the inmates enter the correctional facility, social skills, developing job skills, and other essential skills needed for transitioning into the community. These attributes aid in lowering recidivism rates, increasing self-esteem, decreasing the feeling of loneliness, and gaining marketable skills. I will now be discussing the recommendations. Although the Second Chance Act is proven to be effective and successful, there is still room for improvement. One weakness of the Second Chance Act is the funding of the program. The Second Chance Act has $360 million of funding, but it won't help the programs reach their full potential. This is also an issue with underfunded programs because they won't be able to reduce recidivism or be effective. The Second Chance Act's failure to attend a federal status, which would help create collateral consequences, limits the act from reaching its full potential of impact of the legislation. These collateral consequences, such as the suspension of public housing and federal assistance, would help increase the number of people participating in the program, which would lead to a bigger decrease in recidivism. There is also a lot of concern with public safety when it comes to the Second Chance Act. When ex-offenders are released back into their society and communities, it is seen as a public safety risk, which challenges the Second Chance Act. There are hundreds and thousands of inmates being released from prisons yearly, and a huge number of these inmates will fail when being released and violate their releasing conditions and just commit a new offense, bringing them back into prison. This causes a panic to people. When people with a criminal record need behavioral health treatment, they have a harder time finding programs that are willing to help them because the staff don't know how to manage violent situations. There should be some sort of treatment programs directly made for ex-offenders, or one with staff that is adequately trained to deal with people in violent situations, but also treat them for their behavioral or mental issues. Criminally convicted people with mental illness have a higher chance of being unemployed and dependent on public assistance for some support. There's a concern with people coming out who have a mental illness and suffer substance abuse at the same time. These people deserve a second chance as much as any others. And the only way for that to happen is if invisible punishments, such as being labeled as a criminal, were discussed and must be replaced by the compassion within the proposed Second Chance Act legislation. The target population for reentry programs is resistant because of the history or failed efforts in the programs. There should be performance-based contracts to help provide a strong incentive for the services providers to be aggressive when making efforts to maintain their clients' engagement. Having inmates participate in the programs and stay engaged afterwards is a challenge, but with the right changes and motivation, it can be done, and it would help improve the Second Chance Act for the better. Thank you.